A crane threatens to demolish a vet's home in a racist HOA plot. Watch Marcus fight back with force, like subscribe and hit the bell for our latest action-packed HOA dramas. Injustice wins. I was halfway through my morning workout in Evergreen Heights when I heard the rumble of heavy machinery outside my house, a sound that made me, Marcus Steele, pause mid-lift, my barbell clattering to the ground as I stepped onto my porch, my muscles tensing at the sight before me. A massive crane parked right in front of my driveway, its claw raised like a predator ready to strike, and a crew of workers in orange vests milling around. One of them taping a bright red notice to my door. The words Evergreen Heights HOA Demolition Order screaming in bold letters. Claiming my gym equipment in the front yard was a violation of aesthetic standards, and my house would be partially demolished to ensure compliance. And I felt my blood boil, because I'd been living here for 2 years, a black man in a mostly white, upscale neighborhood, and I dealt with the whispers, the stares, the comments like, he doesn't belong here, but this was a new low. And I knew exactly who was behind it, because there she was, Evelyn Harper, the HOA president, stepping out of her silver Lexus, her blue blazer as sharp as her sneer, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, her voice dripping with fake concern as she walked toward me. Mr. Steele, I'm afraid your equipment has been an eyesore for too long. We've given you plenty of warnings, and now we have no choice but to take action. And I ripped the notice off my door, my voice low but firm. Evelyn, this is my property. I've broken no laws, and you can't just demolish my house. What's this really about? And her eyes narrowed, her tone turning cold. It's about maintaining Evergreen Heights' standards. Marcus, something you clearly don't understand. Maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere else, somewhere more fitting. And there it was, the racism I'd always sensed, now out in the open. Her words a clear message. You don't belong here because you're black. And I felt my fists clench, my heart pounding, and I stepped closer, my 6'4" frame towering over her. I'm not going anywhere, Evelyn, and you're not touching my house. You're breaking the law, and I'll make sure you pay for it. And her sneer widened, her voice a hiss. I'd like to see you try. The HOA has the authority here, and I've got the board and the community behind me. You're fighting a losing battle. And as she turned to signal the crane operator, I saw neighbors peeking out their windows, some with curiosity, others with smug approval, and I knew I was in for a fight. But what Evelyn didn't know was that I wasn't just a powerlifter. I was a retired Special Forces soldier, a man who'd faced worse than her in combat zones across the globe. And I wasn't about to let her destroy the home I'd built for my family, my wife, Lena, and our 2 kids, who were at her parents' for the weekend, thank God, because this was about to get ugly. So I grabbed my phone, my voice steady as I called my old Army buddy, Jamal, who now worked as a lawyer. Jamal, I need you here. The HOA's trying to demolish my house. They're claiming my gym equipment's a violation, but it's a setup. I need legal backup. Now. And as I hung up, I turned to the crane operator, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. You touch my house, and you'll regret it. I'm warning you. And the operator hesitated, his eyes darting to Evelyn, but she waved him on. Do it. He's bluffing. And I felt my military training kick in, my senses sharpening as I assessed the situation, because I knew this wasn't just about the equipment. It was about power, about control, about a racist HOA trying to push me out. And I wasn't going, I need to match them. So I stood my ground, my arms crossed, my eyes locked on Evelyn as the crane's claw lowered toward my roof. And I knew this was just the beginning, because I'd faced enemies before, enemies far more dangerous than her. And I'd always come out on top. But what I didn't know then was how far Evelyn would go, how she'd hire thugs to terrorize my family, how this fight would turn into a battle of not just law, but survival, and how it would change Evergreen Heights forever. Because I wasn't just fighting for my home, I was fighting for justice. For every person of color who'd ever been made to feel less than in this neighborhood, and I was going to win, no matter what it took. The confrontation with the crane had only been the beginning in Evergreen Heights, and I, Marcus Steele, knew that Evelyn Harper wasn't going to stop at a demolition order, because the very next night, after I'd managed to get a temporary injunction from Jamal to halt the HOA's actions, I heard the sound of shattering glass in my backyard, my military instincts kicking in as I bolted out of bed, my heart pounding as I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by my nightstand. Because I knew this wasn't a random break-in. This was targeted, and I was right because when I stepped outside, my flashlight cutting through the darkness, I saw the damage. My gym equipment smashed. Spray paint scrawled across my fence with the words, "Get out," in jagged red letters. And I felt my blood boil, because this wasn't just vandalism. This was a message, and I knew who'd sent it. Evelyn and her HOA cronies. But they weren't working alone, because as I scanned the yard, my senses honed from years in special forces. I heard the faint crunch of gravel behind me, and I turned just in time to dodge a crowbar swinging at my head, a masked figure in black lunging at me, his eyes gleaming with malice. And I didn't hesitate, my training taking over as I sidestepped, grabbing his arm and twisting it behind his back, his weapon clattering to the ground as I pinned him down, my voice low and dangerous. "Who sent you? Talk. Now." And he grunted, his voice muffled through the mask. "You're a dead man. Steele, though, and they won't stop until you're gone." And I felt a chill run down my spine because I knew they meant the HOA, and they'd hired thugs to terrorize me. But I wasn't about to let them win. So I tied his hands with a zip tie I kept in my garage, my voice steady as I called the police. "I've got an intruder in my yard. He attacked me. I need an officer here now." And as I waited, I searched the man, finding a burner phone with a single contact labeled EH, and I knew it stood for Evelyn Harper. So I took photos of everything, the damage, the spray paint, the phone, because I knew I'd need evidence. And when the police arrived, a tired-looking officer taking the thug into custody, I handed over the phone, my voice firm. "This isn't random. The HOA's behind this. They're trying to force me out. You need to investigate." But the officer just shrugged. "We'll look into it. But these things are hard to prove. You might want to consider moving. Safer that way." And I felt my jaw tighten, because I knew the police in this town were in the HOA's pocket, but I wasn't going anywhere. So I called Jamal, my voice urgent. "They sent someone to attack me, broke my stuff. I've got proof, but the cops won't do anything. We need to escalate this." And Jamal's tone was serious. "I'm on it. Marcus, I'll file a harassment claim against the HOA, and I'll reach out to some contacts in the media. We need to get this story out." And as I hung up, I knew the fight was about to get uglier, because the next day I got a call from Lena, my wife, her voice trembling. "Marcus, someone slashed the tires on my car at my parents' house, and there was a note. It said, 'Leave or else, what's happening?'" And I felt my stomach drop, because they were going after my family now, and I knew I had to protect them. So I told Lena to stay with her parents until I could secure the house, my mind racing as I set up security cameras around my property, my military training kicking in as I prepared for the worst. And I started digging deeper, using my old contacts from the Army to trace the burner phone's activity. And what I found confirmed my suspicions. The phone had been used to communicate with a local gang known for doing dirty work, and the payments came from an account tied to the HOA's funds. Over 10,000 funneled through a shell company called Evergreen Solutions, and I knew Evelyn was behind it. So I gathered the evidence, the phone records, the security footage, the financial transactions, and I sent it all to Jamal, my voice steady. "We've got her. She's using HOA money to hire thugs. This is criminal. We need to take this public." And Jamal agreed. "I'll get it to the press." and I'm filing for an emergency injunction to freeze the HOA's accounts. But Marcus, be careful. They're escalating, and you're a target. And I knew he was right, because that night, as I sat in my living room, the lights off, my senses on high alert, I heard the faint sound of footsteps outside, and I grabbed my bat, my body tense as I peered through the window, seeing three shadowy figures approaching my house, their movements deliberate, and I knew this was it. They were coming for me. But what they didn't know was that I was ready, a special forces vet who'd faced worse than this. And I wasn't going to let them destroy my home, my family, my life, because this was war, and I was going to fight, not just for me, but for every person of color who'd ever been targeted in Evergreen Heights. And I was going to win, no matter what it took. The tension in Evergreen Heights had reached a breaking point, and I, Marcus Steele, knew the shadowy figures approaching my house that night weren't here for a friendly chat. Their movements too calculated, their silhouettes too menacing. So I gripped my bat tighter, my special forces training kicking in as I moved silently to the side of my living room window, my senses on high alert. The darkness outside broken only by the faint glow of a street lamp, and I counted 3 of them. All in black, one carrying what looked like a Molotov cocktail, the others with crowbars. And I knew this was a coordinated attack, Evelyn Harper and her HOA goons stepping up their game. But they'd picked the wrong man to mess with, because I'd faced ambushes in war zones, and I wasn't about to let them burn down my home. So I slipped out the back door, my movements swift and silent, circling around to flank them, my bat in one hand, my phone in the other, recording everything as I moved. Because I knew I'd need proof, and as I got closer, I heard one of them whisper, "Boss said make it quick, burn the house," scaring him off for good. And I felt my blood boil, because boss could only mean Evelyn. But I didn't have every time to think, because the one with the Molotov lit the rag, the flame flickering as he raised his arm to throw, and I sprang into action, my bat swinging down hard on his wrist, the bottle shattering on the ground as he screamed, the fire catching the grass but not my house, and I tackled him, pinning him down with my knee as the other 2 rushed me, their crowbars swinging. But I was faster, ducking under one strike and slamming my elbow into the second guy's jaw, sending him sprawling, the third coming at me with a wild swing that I blocked with my bat, twisting it out of his hands and flipping him onto his back, my voice a growl. "Who sent you? Tell me now, or I'll break every bone in your body." And the first guy, still pinned under me, gasped, "Harper, it's Harper. She paid us. Just let me go. Man, I don't want trouble." And I felt a grim satisfaction, because I had it on video, a confession linking Evelyn to this attack. So I zip-tied their hands, dragging them to the front yard as I called the police, my voice steady. "I've got 3 intruders who tried to burn my house down. I've subdued them. I need officers here now." And this time, the police couldn't ignore me, because the fire was still smoldering in my yard, the evidence undeniable. And as the sirens approached, I uploaded the video to social media, tagging local news outlets with a caption, "HOA hires thugs to burn my home, Evergreen Heights exposed." And within hours, it went viral. Thousands of shares, comments flooding in. "This is racism. Shut down the HOA and support Marcus. He's a hero." And I knew the tide was turning, because by morning, news vans were parked outside my house, the reporters knocking on my door, their cameras rolling as I spoke, my voice steady. "I'm Marcus Steele, a veteran and a resident of Evergreen Heights. The HOA has been targeting me because I'm black. They tried to demolish my house, and now they've sent thugs to burn it down. I have proof, and I'm not stopping until justice is served." And the story exploded, national outlets picking it up. Hashtags like "Justice for Marcus" trending, and I saw neighbors watching from their windows, some with shame, others with anger. And I knew Evelyn was panicking, because Jamal called me that afternoon, his voice urgent, Marcus, the HOA is trying to cover their tracks. They've issued a statement saying that you're a violent threat and the fire was self-defense. But we've got the video, and I've got a contact at the FBI. They're looking into the gang connections. This is bigger than we thought. And I felt a surge of adrenaline because I knew we were close, but I also knew Evelyn wouldn't go down without a fight. And that night, as I sat in my living room, the lights off, my senses on high alert, I got a call from an unknown number, a distorted voice on the other end. "Steele, back off, or your family pays the price." And I felt my stomach drop, because Lena and the kids were still at her parents'. But I knew they weren't safe, so I called my old unit buddy, Rico, a private security expert. My voice steady. "Rico, I need you to get Lena and the kids. Bring them to a safe house. The HOA's coming for them. I'll handle things here." And as I hung up, I knew this was war, but I also knew I had the upper hand, because the video had turned the public against Evelyn. And I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every person of color who'd ever been targeted in Evergreen Heights, for every family who'd been made to feel less than. And I was going to win, because I'd survived worse than this in combat, and I wasn't about to let a racist HOA take me down. But what I didn't know then was that Evelyn had one last card to play, a final act of desperation that would push this battle to its breaking point, and I'd have to use every skill I had to stop her, because this wasn't just about my house anymore. It was about justice, and I was ready to fight for it, no matter the cost. The viral video of the attack on my home turned Evergreen Heights into a battleground of public opinion, and I, Marcus Steele, knew this was my chance to strike back at Evelyn Harper and the HOA, because the tide was turning, with news outlets across Texas and beyond running the story, headlines screaming, "Veteran targeted by racist HOA," and Evergreen Heights scandal exposed. And I could feel the pressure mounting on Evelyn, but I also knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. So I met with Jamal the next morning at a diner across town, my voice low as we sat in a corner booth, the hum of the news playing on the TV above us. "Jamal, we've got the video, the confession, the financial records. We need to hit them hard. File a lawsuit, not just for me, but for every family they've targeted." And Jamal nodded, his eyes sharp. "I'm already on it. Marcus, I filed a federal lawsuit this morning against the HOA for racial discrimination, harassment, and conspiracy to commit violence. And I've looped in the ACLU. They're sending the team to help. This is a civil rights case now." And I felt a surge of hope, because this wasn't just a local fight anymore. It was national. And as we spoke, my phone buzzed with a text from Rico. "Lena and the kids are safe. I've got them in a secure location. But I found trackers in her car. They're watching her," and I felt my stomach twist, because I knew Evelyn was desperate. But I also knew I had to stay focused. So I told Jamal, "We need to keep the pressure on. The media's on our side. Let's use it." And he agreed, setting up a press conference for that afternoon outside the Evergreen Heights Community Center. And I stood at the podium, the cameras flashing, my voice steady. "I'm Marcus Steele, a veteran and a resident of Evergreen Heights. The HOA, led by Evelyn Harper, has targeted me and other families of color for years. They tried to demolish my home. They hired thugs to burn it down. And I have proof this isn't just about me. It's about justice for every person who's been made to feel like they don't belong here." And I held up the financial records, the burner phone, the video stills, the crowd of reporters gasping as they scribbled notes. And I saw neighbors watching from the sidelines, some with shame, others with anger. But I also saw support. Mrs. Lopez, a Latina single mom who'd been fined for her kids' toys, holding a sign that read "Justice for Marcus," and the Wilsons, a white couple who'd lived here for years, standing beside her, their faces set with resolve. And I knew we were building a movement. But Evelyn wasn't done, because that evening, she released a statement through her lawyer, claiming I was a violent ex-con who'd fabricated the attack to smear the HOA, and she doubled down, accusing me of inciting racial division. And I felt my blood boil, Because I'd never been in trouble with the law, I was a decorated veteran. But I also knew this was her play, to discredit me, to turn the narrative against me. And she had allies, because some news outlets, the ones cozy with the HOA's connections, ran her story. Veteran or vigilante, Evergreen Heights HOA fights back. And I saw the comments online, some calling me a thug, others saying, if he's causing trouble, he should leave. And I felt the weight of it, the racism I'd fought against my whole life, now amplified by a media storm. But I wasn't alone because the ACLU stepped in, releasing a statement of their own. Marcus Steele is a victim of systemic racism. We stand with him in his fight for justice. And they connected me with a civil rights lawyer, Aisha Carter, who flew in from D.C. You said her voice sharp as we met in my living room. Marcus, we're not just going after the HOA. We're going after Evelyn personally. She's the ringleader, and we've got evidence of her ties to the gang, wire transfers, encrypted messages. She's going down. And I nodded, grateful for the support. But I also knew the fight was far from over, because the next day, I got a call from Jamal, his voice tense. Marcus, the HOA's countersuing. They're claiming you assaulted those men. They've got witnesses. Neighbors who say they saw you attack first, and Evelyn's pushing for a restraining order against you, Al. And I felt a wave of frustration because I knew those witnesses were her cronies. But I also knew I had the truth on my side, so I told Jamal, let them sue. We've got the video, the confession, and the public. They can't win this. And Aisha agreed. We'll counter with a motion to dismiss, and we're filing a criminal complaint against Evelyn for conspiracy. The FBI is already looking into the gang. They've traced the payments back to her. And I felt a grim satisfaction because I knew we were closing in. But I also knew Evelyn was desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. So I stayed vigilant, my security cameras on, my senses sharp, and I started reaching out to more neighbors, building a coalition. Families like the Lopez's and the Wilsons joining me, their voices rising at a community meeting I called. Mrs. Lopez shouting, we're with Marcus. The HOA's been terrorizing us for years. It's time for change. And I knew we had a movement, but I also knew the final battle was coming because Evelyn wasn't going to stop, not until she was forced to, and I was ready to force her because this wasn't just about my house anymore. It was about justice, and I was going to make sure it was served, no matter what it took. The media storm and legal battles had turned Evergreen Heights into a pressure cooker, but Marcus Steele knew the real fight was just beginning because Evelyn Harper and the HOA were doubling down, their countersuit claiming I'd assaulted the thugs who tried to burn my house, and I could feel the weight of their lies pressing down. But I also knew the truth was on my side. So I met with Aisha and Jamal at my house the next morning. My living room now a makeshift war room. Papers and laptops scattered across the table as we strategized. Aisha's voice sharp. Marcus, the FBI's investigation turned up more than we expected. They've traced over $50,000 in HOA funds to Evergreen Solutions, the shell company Evelyn used to hire the gang, and they've got wiretaps. She's on tape ordering the attack on your house. This is conspiracy to commit arson. She's going down. And I felt a surge of adrenaline because this was the smoking gun we needed. But Jamal's tone was cautious. We've got the evidence, but Evelyn's got connections. She's already spinning this in the press, claiming you're a danger to the community. We need to take this public, show the neighborhood who she really is. And I agreed, because I knew the court of public opinion was just as important as the courtroom. So I called a community meeting that evening at the Evergreen Heights Park, setting up a projector and speakers. My voice steady as I addressed the crowd of over 70 residents. I'm Marcus Steele, and I've been fighting for my home, for my family, for all of us. The HOA, led by Evelyn Harper, has been targeting people of color in this neighborhood for years, and now we have proof. They hired a gang to burn my house down. They used your HOA fees to do it, and I played the wiretap audio. Evelyn's voice crackling through the speakers. I don't care what it takes. Get steel out. Burn it if you have to. He doesn't belong here. And I saw the crowd gasp. Their faces a mix of shock and anger. Mrs. Lopez shouting, "She tried to kill him. She used our money to do it." And the Wilsons, who'd been quiet supporters, stood up. Mr. Wilson's voice firm. "We've been paying fees for years, and this is what they do. We're done with her." And I held up the financial records, projecting them on the screen. This is where your money went. 50,000 to a gang, while our streets flood, our lights flicker. Evelyn's been stealing from us, and she's been targeting families like mine, like the Lopez's, because of our race. But we're not going anywhere. And the crowd erupted, chanting, "Resign, resign." Yeah, as Evelyn, who'd shown up hoping to salvage her image, stood at the back, her face pale, her voice shrill. "This is a lie. He's manipulating you. I've been protecting Evergreen Heights. You don't know what you're doing." But no one was listening, because the evidence was undeniable. And I saw Mrs. Carter, one of Evelyn's old allies, turn to her voice trembling. "You used our money to hurt him. You lied to us. I trusted you." And Evelyn's composure cracked, her hands shaking as she tried to leave. But the crowd surrounded her, their voices rising, demanding answers. And I knew this was the moment. So I stepped forward. "Evelyn, it's over. The FBI's coming for you. The community's against you. Step down now, or it'll get worse." And she glared at me, her eyes blazing. But I saw fear there too, because she knew she was done. And the next morning, the news broke. Evergreen Heights HOA president arrested for conspiracy and fraud. The FBI raiding her home, finding more evidence of her ties to the gang, emails, bank records, even a burner phone with texts ordering the attack on me. And I watched the footage on TV. Evelyn in handcuffs, her head bowed as they led her away, and I felt a grim satisfaction, because justice was finally being served. But I also knew this wasn't just about her. It was about the system that had let her thrive. So I worked with Aisha to file a class action lawsuit on behalf of all the families the HOA had targeted. The Lopez's, the Nguyen's, every person of color who'd been fined, harassed, pushed out, and we won. The court ordering the HOA to pay restitution, $200,000 to be split among the families. And I used my share to start a community fund, a way to help those same families thrive. But I also knew the fight wasn't over, because racism doesn't die with one arrest. And I saw it in the way some neighbors still avoided me, their eyes cold, but I also saw hope, in the way others rallied around me. Mrs. Carter bringing me a pie as an apology, her voice soft. "I was wrong, Marcus. I see that now." And I knew we had a chance to rebuild. So I called another meeting, my voice steady. "Evelyn's gone, but we need to make sure this never happens again. We're electing a new HOA, one that works for all of us. Who's with me?" And the crowd cheered, hands shooting up. And I knew Evergreen Heights was ready for change, but I also knew the final battle was coming. Because Evelyn's arrest had left her allies desperate, and they weren't going to let this go without one last fight. With Evelyn Harper's arrest, Evergreen Heights felt like a battlefield after the smoke had cleared. But I, Marcus Steele, knew the war wasn't over. Because her allies, a small but loyal group of HOA board members and residents, were still out there, and I could feel their resentment simmering, their whispers at the grocery store, their glares as I walked by. So I stayed vigilant, my security cameras on, my senses sharp, because I knew they wouldn't let Evelyn's downfall go unanswered. And I was right, because 3 nights after her arrest, as I sat in my living room, the lights low, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from my cameras, my heart racing as I checked the feed, seeing 5 figures in black moving toward my house, their movements too coordinated to be random. And I knew this was their last stand, a final act of desperation to take me down. But I was ready, my special forces training kicking in as I grabbed my bat and a taser I'd bought after the last attack. My voice steady as I called Rico. "They're here, 5 of them. I need backup. Get the police en route. Enrico's voice was calm. I'm 10 minutes out. Hold them off, brother. And I slipped out the back door, my movement silent as I circled around. The darkness my ally as I watched them approach. One of them carrying a gas can, another with a crowbar, and I heard their leader whisper, Harper's orders, even from jail. Finish what we started. Burn it down. End him. And I felt my blood boil. Because even behind bars, Evelyn was still pulling strings, but she'd underestimated me because I wasn't just a power lifter. I was a soldier, and I wasn't going down without a fight. So I moved in, my taser sparking as I hit the first guy in the back, his body jerking as he fell, the gas can clattering to the ground. And I swung my bat at the second, catching him in the ribs, his crowbar flying as he doubled over. The other three rushing me, but I was faster. Ducking under a wild swing and tackling the third guy, my knee slamming into his chest as I zip-tied his hands so the fourth coming at me with a knife. But I disarmed him with a swift block, twisting his arm until he dropped it, and the fifth turned to run. But I caught him, pinning him against my fence. My voice a growl. Tell me everything, or I'll make sure you don't walk away from this. And he gasped. It's the board. They're following Evelyn's orders. They want you gone, please. Don't hurt me. And I tied him up with the others, my camera still rolling, capturing every moment, every confession. And as the police sirens wailed in the distance, I knew this was the end game because Rico arrived with the cops, their flashlights cutting through the night as they took the men into custody, the officer in charge, a gruff man I hadn't seen before, watching my footage with a grimace. This is attempted murder. Steele, we've got enough to tie this to Harper and the board. You've done good. And I felt a wave of relief because this time they couldn't ignore the evidence. And the next morning, the news broke. Evergreen Heights HOA board members arrested in conspiracy to attack veteran. The remaining board members who'd been loyal to Evelyn taken into custody. Their names splashed across every outlet. And I watched as the community reacted, a mix of shock and anger. Mrs. Lopez organizing a rally outside the community center, her voice fierce. We demand a new HOA, one that stands for all of us, not against us. And the Wilsons joined her, their signs reading Evergreen Heights for everyone. And I knew we'd won, because the court date for our class action lawsuit came the following week. And with the new arrests, the case was airtight, the judge ruling in our favor, ordering the dissolution of the old HOA, fining the remaining board members $300,000 to be paid to the community fund I'd started. And Evelyn, already in jail, faced additional charges of conspiracy to commit murder. Her sentence extended to 15 years, and I stood outside the courthouse, the cameras flashing, my voice steady. This isn't just a win for me. It's a win for every family in Evergreen Heights who's been targeted, who's been made to feel like they don't belong. We're taking our community back, and we're going to make it a place for everyone. And the crowd cheered. Mrs. Carter, who'd once sided with Evelyn, now standing beside me, her voice soft. I was wrong, Marcus. You showed me what justice looks like. I'm with you. And I nodded, grateful for her change of heart, because I knew we'd need every ally to rebuild. So I led the effort to elect a new HOA board, a diverse group that included Mrs. Lopez, Mr. Wilson, and me, and we got to work, rewriting the rules to ban discrimination, ensuring transparency, and using the community fund to repair the damage Evelyn had caused, fixing the streets, the lights, and starting a youth program for kids of all races. But I also knew the fight wasn't over, because racism doesn't die with one lawsuit. And I saw it in the way some neighbors still whispered, but I also saw hope in the way others came together. And I knew Evergreen Heights was ready for a new chapter, one I'd fight for, no matter what came next. With the old HOA dissolved and Evelyn Harper and her allies behind bars, Evergreen Heights felt like a community waking from a long nightmare. And Marcus Steele, stood at the forefront of that awakening. Not as a soldier anymore, but as a leader. Because I knew the fight wasn't just about tearing down a corrupt system, it was about building something better, something that would last. So I threw myself into the work, starting with the new HOA board, a group that now included me, Mrs. Lopez, Mr. Wilson, and a few other residents who'd stepped up after the arrests, and we met every week at the community center. Our voices united as we drafted new bylaws, rules that banned discrimination, ensured transparency in every decision, and prioritized the needs of the entire community, not just a select few. And we didn't stop there. We used the $300,000 from the lawsuit to fund projects that had been neglected for years, fixing the potholes on our streets, installing new streetlights, and turning an empty lawn into a community gym, a place where kids of all races could train, play, and grow. And I watched as Evergreen Heights transformed, the once tense streets now filled with laughter, Black kids, Latino kids, white kids lifting weights together, their parents chatting on the sidelines, sharing stories of the old days under Evelyn's reign. And I felt a swell of pride, because this was what I'd fought for, a place where my kids, Lena, and I could thrive, where no one had to live in fear of a violation notice or a midnight attack. But I also knew change wasn't easy, because some residents, like Mr. Thompson, a longtime friend of Evelyn's, still clung to their prejudices, his voice sharp at one of our meetings. I don't see why we need all these changes. Things were fine before. Now it's all so different. And I knew what he meant by different. He meant the diversity, the inclusivity, the fact that Evergreen Heights wasn't his exclusive little enclave anymore. But I didn't let his words stop me. Instead, I invited him to the gym's opening ceremony, hoping to show him what we'd built. And to my surprise, he showed up, his face tight with discomfort at first, but when a group of kids, including my son Jamal, asked him to spot them on a bench press, his expression softened, and he muttered, "Maybe this isn't so bad." And I knew change was slow, but it was happening, and I kept pushing, organizing events to bring the neighborhood together, like a weekly fitness boot camp in the park, where families of all backgrounds trained side by side. The Browns sharing their jump rope skills, the Wilsons teaching yoga stretches, and I saw Mrs. Carter there helping set up cones, her voice soft as she said, "Marcus, I never thought I'd see this. I was so wrong about you, about all of us." And I smiled, because those moments were the real victory, not just the gym or the new rules, but the breaking down of walls in people's hearts. And we didn't stop there. I proposed using the community fund to start a mentorship program, pairing kids with professionals from every field, giving them role models who look like them. And the board approved it unanimously, naming it the Evergreen Futures Program. And I watched as those kids thrived. Little Maria Lopez telling me she wanted to be a soldier like me, her eyes bright with determination. And I knew we were building more than a gym. We were building a future. But I also knew the past wasn't entirely gone, because I heard whispers that some of Evelyn's old allies were trying to regroup, meeting in secret to take back the HOA. And I saw a few anonymous flyers pop up around the neighborhood, claiming the new board was too radical in destroying tradition. And I felt a pang of anger, because even after everything, they were still trying to tear us apart. So I called a board meeting, my voice firm. We can't let them sabotage what we've built. We need to show the neighborhood we're stronger than their lies. Let's organize a unity march, celebrate everything that makes Evergreen Heights special, and invite everyone. And the board agreed, setting the date for the following weekend, and the march was a success. The streets packed with the families, music from every culture filling the air, kids carrying banners they'd painted with messages like Evergreen for all and no more hate. And I saw Mr. Thompson there, walking beside Mrs. Lopez, his smile genuine as he chatted with her about her son's soccer game. And I knew we were winning, but I also knew the fight wasn't over. Because as the march wound down, I got a call from Aisha, her voice tense. "Marcus, some of Evelyn's old cronies are trying to file a lawsuit to overturn the HOA election. They're claiming it was rigged. We need to be ready. And I felt my stomach drop because I knew what that meant. They were still trying to push us out. But I also knew I had the community behind me now. And as I looked out at the march, at the faces of the neighbors who'd become my family, I said, "We'll fight them, Aisha. We've come too far to lose this now." And I knew we'd win because Evergreen Heights wasn't just a neighborhood anymore. It was a movement, and I'd never stop fighting for it, no matter what came next. The Unity March had set the tone for a new Evergreen Heights, and as I, Marcus Steele, stood in the community gym a year later, watching the sun rise through the windows, casting a warm glow over the kids lifting weights and laughing together, I felt a deep sense of peace because the neighborhood I'd fought for had become a place of true belonging, where my family, Lena, our kids, and every resident could thrive without fear, and I could see the changes we'd made. The gym, now a vibrant hub with training programs for all ages, the streets freshly paved, the lights shining bright, and a mural painted on the community center wall, its bold colors spelling out Evergreen Heights, strength in unity, a far cry from the days of Evelyn Harper's reign, when a crane had threatened my home, when thugs had tried to burn it down. And I knew this was the legacy we'd built, not just for ourselves, but for every family who'd ever felt out of place here. So I poured my energy into making sure that legacy lasted, working with the new HOA board to secure grants for more community projects, building a playground next to the gym, a place where kids of all races could play, and we expanded the Evergreen Futures program, helping more kids find mentors. Kids like Maria Lopez, who'd just been accepted into a military prep program, her mom hugging me with tears in her eyes. "Marcus, you gave her a dream. I'll never forget that." And I smiled. Because that was why I fought, for the future, not just for my community, but for every child who deserved a chance. And we didn't stop there. We turned the gym into a learning space, hosting workshops on everything from fitness to racial equity, inviting speakers to talk about the history of discrimination in the military. And I watched as minds opened. Even Mr. Thompson, who'd once grumbled about the changes, now coaching a youth weightlifting team, his voice soft as he told me, "I was wrong, Marcus. You showed me what strength really means." And I felt a lump in my throat, because those moments were the real victory, not just the gym or the new rules, but the way Evergreen Heights had become a place where people saw each other, truly saw each other. And we held an annual festival to celebrate, the whole neighborhood coming together with music, food, and games. The Lopez's salsa next to the Wilson's barbecue, Mrs. Carter's peach pie next to my wife's cornbread, and I watched as families who'd once lived in fear of violation notices now danced together under the stars. Maria Lopez and my son Jamal racing through the crowd, their laughter a reminder of what we'd achieved. But I also knew the fight wasn't over, because racism doesn't disappear overnight. And I heard whispers of new residents moving in, some bringing old prejudices with them. But I also saw hope, in the way the kids trained without fear, in the way Mrs. Carter now mentored at the gym, helping with fitness classes, her smile genuine as she said, "I want to give back, Marcus. You taught me how." And I knew those small acts of change were the foundation of something bigger. So I kept pushing, using my platform to advocate for fair housing policies across Texas, speaking at city council meetings, my voice steady as I told our story. Evergreen Heights is proof that we can fight back, that we can build communities where everyone belongs. And we need to keep fighting for that, everywhere. And our story spread, inspiring other neighborhoods to stand up, to demand change. And I got letters from people I'd never met, Black families, Latino families, all saying, "You gave us hope." And I kept everyone a reminder of why I'd started this fight. And as for Evelyn and her allies, their trials ended with convictions. Evelyn sentenced to 15 years for conspiracy and fraud, her board members serving shorter terms. Their properties sold to diverse families who moved in with open arms, and I saw neighbors help them unpack, a sight that made my heart swell, because this was the Evergreen Heights I'd always wanted, a place where no one was pushed out, where diversity wasn't feared but celebrated. And on the anniversary of the night I'd fought off the final attack, we held a ceremony in the gym, unveiling a plaque that read, "In honor of Marcus Steele, who fought for justice and built a home for all." And I stood at the podium, my voice steady. A year ago, I was fighting for my life, for my home, but today we stand here united, a symbol of what's possible when we fight for justice. Evergreen Heights isn't perfect, but it's ours, and we'll keep making it better, together. And the crowd cheered. My son Jamal running up to hug me, his smile brighter than the sun. And as I looked out at the faces, black, Latino, white, all part of this new Evergreen Heights, I thought about Evelyn, now a footnote in our history. Her dreams of division shattered, and I didn't feel vindictive. I felt at peace, because the real victory wasn't in her downfall. It was in the thriving community she'd tried to destroy. And as the festival wound down, I sat with Mrs. Lopez, her voice soft. "Marcus, you changed everything. You showed us what we could be." And I smiled, because I knew she was right. But I also knew it wasn't just me, it was all of us, fighting together. And as I watched the last of the sunrise fade, I knew Evergreen Heights would never be the same. And neither would I. Because this fight had taught me that true change starts with standing up, with refusing to be silenced. And I'd never stop standing up. For my community. For a world where everyone belongs. Marcus, a Special Forces vet, defeated a corrupt HOA, saved his home, and united Evergreen Heights for equality. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you love this story. Hit the bell for our latest videos on HOA battles and justice. You won't want to miss what's next.